Okay, thank you. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We're so happy to have you here, and welcome to the 16th Annual Undergraduate Research Symposium and our Alumni Keynote reception. My name is Kevin Hatfield, and I serve as our Assistant Vice Provost for Undergraduate Research and Distinguished Scholarships with the Division of Undergraduate Education and Student Success. Since the debut of the symposium in 2011, I've enjoyed the privilege of chairing our symposium steering committee. It's comprised of members from across the institution who work innovatively throughout the year to plan this event for our undergraduate presenters and their research mentors, as well as our guests from Lane, Umpqua, and Central Oregon community colleges, local high schools, the Eugene Springfield community, and this year we have visiting McNair and Stamp scholars traveling from Tulane, Mercer, and Siena Heights University to campus to be with us. Over the past 16 years, the symposium has celebrated the research and creative work and the experiential learning of 5,845 students and has recognized the mentorship of over 3,500 faculty members, graduate students, and community partners. This year, we're honored to welcome 597 presenters and 442 research mentors, of which 115 are graduate students. And just wanted to acknowledge that that's a new record for us this year, so it just shows the amazing work our graduate students are doing as well. The record number of 493 presentations this year encompasses students from all schools and colleges, the Phil and Penny Knight Campus for Accelerating Scientific Impact, the Ballmer Institute for Children's Behavioral Health, 82 majors, and 77 minors. The breadth of participants is further illustrated by the 134 research centers, institutes, laboratories, museums, and archives that hosted the undergraduates who are presenting here today. And of those students, 341 received funding to support their research and creative work from 83 different internal and external sources. What I want to do is just take a moment to acknowledge the principal co-sponsors of the symposium who make this event possible, and it truly is a village that is required for this event to be pulled off. And so I just wanted to share who those folks are, and I'm going to recognize some specific individuals here in a moment. But the Division of Undergraduate Education and Student Success and the Center for Undergraduate Research and Engagement, the Office of the Vice President for Research and Innovation, and the Undergraduate Research Opportunities Program, the University Housing and Department of Residence Life, the College of Design, and Sean Sharp's amazing team in the College of Design Output Room who support the students with printing their posters. That's over 360 posters they helped us print this year. The Robert D. Clark Honors College, the School of Journalism and Communication, the Herb Memorial Union, the Ronald D. McNair Scholars Program, and our wonderful peer leaders from the Affiliated Students of Undergraduate Research and Engagement, or ASSURE, and the Oregon Undergraduate Research Journal, who work throughout the year to host workshops for presenters on poster design, on practicing oral presentations, and writing abstracts and author, artist, and designer statements. And finally, I want to have a special thank you to the UO Libraries, the Institute of Neuroscience, and the Knight Campus for co-funding the poster printing this year. So thank you to all of our sponsors that support our students. I'll direct your attention to the symposium program that's available on our website, the symposium website, that includes the full acknowledgments of our steering committee members, our session moderators, our over 60 volunteers for today that are joining us, and the list of names and the presentation descriptions for all of the presenters and their research mentors. And before I conclude my opening remarks, I just want to take a moment to spotlight the core planning team. This is the team that rolls up their sleeves and really makes sure that this event happens. So if the folks could just stand briefly while I announce them. J.C. Bartlett, Nancy Cunningham, Christabel Dragoo, Lanch McCormick, Kenyon Plummer, Victoria Robinson, Joanna Wallace, Mikhail Williams, Jessica Winders, and Carl Reesner. Thank you all for everything you do. It's now my honor to introduce the University of Oregon's 19th president, Carl Schultz, who will offer remarks and recognize the 4 recipients of the Center for Undergraduate Research and Engagement 2026 Faculty Research Mentor Awards. President Schultz is in his 3rd year at the U of O. He previously worked at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where he was an economics professor, served as the Dean of the College of Letters and Science, and directed the federally funded Institute for the Research on Poverty. And they told me to make sure the introduction wasn't any longer than that. So welcome, President Schultz.
Kevin, thank you very much, and for those who are here, thank you so much for coming out. This is a spectacularly wonderful event, so I'm really honored to get to play a part in it. And so I want to start by recognizing the students whose work fills the room or will fill the auditorium today. The undergraduate researchers and creative scholars presenting and performing what you have produced this year in labs, in studios, in the field, in archives, on stages is wonderful. So thank you for sharing it with us. And I want to thank the mentors who made this work possible. Faculty mentorship of undergraduate research is one of the most consequential things that happens at this university. And it's one of the most generous. So it rarely shows up in a job description. It happens because faculty believe in their students and choose to invest in them. And so we see you and we are very, very grateful. Undergraduate research was absolutely formative in my career. I had the opportunity, you might not think this is the most interesting subject imaginable, but I studied the decentralization of obstetrical care services in southeastern Minnesota. It's slightly more interesting than it sounds like because the Mayo Clinic happens to be located in southern Minnesota, and there's lots of very small towns. And so the question is, were doctors, in particular obstetricians in these very small towns, prideful when they got hard to deliver cases and therefore kept them in their local hospitals rather than sending them to a world-class health center, the Mayo Clinic? I won't tell you the answer to that. You can corner me some other time. But let me talk, and it set me on a course, the life of the mind, so to speak, that absolutely changed my world and was profoundly, profoundly important to me. So let's talk about why this work matters to the students who do it, to this university, and to the state of Oregon. There's strong evidence that students who participate in undergraduate research are more resilient, more engaged, have better retention and graduation outcomes than their peers. They learn how to ask questions that don't yet have answers. They learn how to fail, to adjust, to keep going. They learn how to communicate what they found to people who are not in the room when they found it. These are habits of mind that prepare a person for almost anything. And undergraduate research changes how students see themselves. The first time a student realizes they are not just consuming knowledge, but contributing to it, something shifts. They start to think of themselves as scholars, as scientists, as artists, as people whose ideas matter. And this is at the heart of what we're trying to do as a university. Supporting students to graduate on time and launch confidently into their futures, building a community where every student can thrive, leading in fields where Oregon is uniquely positioned to make a difference. Undergraduate research lives at the intersection of all of these. I also want to acknowledge that this celebration comes at a moment when the research community faces headwinds. I read that line this morning and said, that's not okay. Faces headwinds? So we face unprecedented assault on American higher education. And that has created uncertainty among all of us. And so I want you to also know that I see the resilience that this community has shown in continuing to pursue our mission. And that too has not gone unnoticed. Which makes today and the awards we're about to present all the more meaningful. So the Faculty Research Mentor Awards recognize UO faculty members each year for their exceptional mentoring of undergraduate research, creative work, and experiential learning. It honors faculty who help their students build a network of mentors while themselves practicing mentorship that is responsive, reciprocal, and adaptive. Nominations can come from current students, from alumni, faculty, staff, and since the award debuted in 2018, the Center for Undergraduate Research and Engagement has acknowledged or recognized 37 faculty members, and today we add 4 more. So it's my profound privilege to present the 2026 Faculty Research Mentor Awards. So Benjamin Hutchinson, an assistant professor of neuroscience and psychology. Professor Hutchinson runs, you're going to be shocked by this, he runs the Hutchinson Lab of Cognitive Neuroscience, where he currently mentors 8 undergraduate researchers, 4 of them who are completing honors theses. The graduate students who work alongside him nominated him, which tells you something. They wrote that he creates an environment in which undergraduates are treated as developing scientists and are engaged with the full research process, including study design, pre-registration, data analysis, and scientific communication. His mentorship shapes not only the undergraduates in his lab, but the way the next generation of mentors will mentor. His nominators wrote, his approach has influenced how we support and mentor undergraduate researchers in the lab, reinforcing the importance of meeting students where they are, fostering independence, and creating opportunities for meaningful contribution. So please give a loud whoop and roar for Professor Hutchinson. Congratulations. That's good. You did whoop and roar. Next, Caitlin McDonough, Assistant Professor, Department of Anthropology. Professor McDonough was nominated by a remarkably diverse community of current students and former mentees, who are now alumni, who together described her as the kind of mentor who not only sets the model, but exceeds it. Her students follow her from introductory courses through field schools into research labs, capstones, top graduate programs, and professional positions. Across that entire arc, she is making space, opening doors, and preparing them as the next generation of experts. From her nominators, her inclusive teaching style ensures that everyone feels they belong in the classroom or out in the field, regardless of their background or physical hurdles. She is the professor and mentor that I think of when I think of the kind of professor I would like to be. Whoops and hollers for Professor McDonough. Congratulations. I absolutely love these awards, so for the folks who make it possible. Next, Samantha Schoon, Associate Professor, Communication Disorders and Sciences Program. Professor Schoon leads the Optimizing Swallowing and Eating for the Elderly Lab, the OC Lab. Her mentees describe her as consistently responsive, reciprocal, and adaptive. She meets students where they are in their academic journeys, and she builds their confidence to engage with complex topics like dysphagia, aging, and neurodegenerative diseases. She intentionally bridges medical and disability studies perspectives, helping our students think across disciplines and see the human implications of their work. Her nominators wrote, Professor Schoon has had a profound impact on each of us. She has supported our growth from students exploring the field to individuals confident in pursuing research and future careers in speech-language pathology and healthcare. So loud whoops and hollers for Professor Schoon, and congratulations. And Colin Williamson, Assistant Professor, Department of Cinema Studies. Professor Williamson was nominated by a cohort of 15 undergraduate mentees who describe him as embodying the principles of responsive, reciprocal, and adaptive mentorship. They wrote about how he gets to know his students individually, how every request for a letter of recommendation or guidance on a scholarly project is met with thoughtful, considerate response. In his hands-on film history course last spring, he gave every student the platform to publish a research essay on the Kingdom of Shadows blog, bringing them into the work as scholars, not just as students. One of his nominators put it this way: joining this network of scholars has helped me build real connections with people whose names I recognize from book covers and course reading lists. I feel regarded as a welcome member of the academic community rather than as an outsider looking in. So last, loud applause and whoops for Professor Williamson. Congratulations. To Professors Hutchinson, McDonough, Schoon, and Williamson, thank you. You represent what is best about this university. The hours you give your students, often quietly, often without recognition, are precisely the hours that change the trajectory of a young person's life. We are profoundly grateful. And to the students presenting today, I can't wait to see what you do next. Please enjoy the rest of the symposium, and thank you very much. Go Ducks.
Thank you, President Schultz. It's now my honor to introduce our 2026 Alumni Keynote Speaker, Merida Mahaffey. Merida is an interdisciplinary scholar based in Brooklyn, New York. She is currently a master's student at Bard Graduate Center, where she studies museum ethics, curatorial practice, and Native American material culture. Her research is grounded in a strong belief in the importance of relational thinking and its power to shape how knowledge is co-constructed. Merida graduated in 2018 with majors in environmental studies and history. While pursuing her bachelor's degree, she participated in the UO's Emerging Leaders Program and the Ronald E. McNair Scholars Program. Merida was also a student member of our symposium steering committee, and for her Emerging Leaders Program project in 2015, she developed a plan and a proposal for incorporating undergraduate research exhibits within the learning commons of the residence halls to engage first-year students with these opportunities and resources that the Public Research University offers. Her plan, over time, was implemented by University Housing, the Center for Undergraduate Research and Engagement, and even here in the EMU, if you go just down the hallway, you'll see one of these exhibits. And they are now rotating installations of undergraduate research and creative work that include posters accompanied by biographies of the students and their mentors with call to action QR codes that will link undergraduates to advising hours for undergraduate research. We also were thoughtful in placing them, and this was part of Merida's proposal as well, along tour routes for prospective and visiting students and families so they could also get a sense of what lies ahead at the U of O. As an undergraduate, Merida traveled to New Zealand to study conservation and developed a deep interest in oceanic art and cultural history. Through research in environmental history, she began to explore the intersection of land-based knowledge, politics, and material culture. Her undergraduate honors thesis focused on the environmental history of the Matiu Sums Island, located off the coast of Wellington, New Zealand. Her project examined collaborative land management partnerships between Maori and non-Maori stakeholders that developed after treaty redress. As a part of this process, Merida conducted primary research in New Zealand, which was supported by an undergraduate research opportunities mini-grant, and Carl was just mentioning, might have been one of the first of the Europe mini-grants. Her thesis experienced and really opened up questions about land politics and methodologies like oral history, both of which she has explored in her graduate work through an art historical lens. Soon after relocating to New York City to work in sustainable fashion, an experience teaching art history in New York City public schools led her to the museum field. In 2024, Merida began pursuing a master's degree in design history and material culture at Bard Graduate Center. Her graduate studies have taken her abroad to work at the Pitt Rivers Museum and more recently at the Wheelwright Museum of the American Indian. Merida is currently training as a curator and is part of the Metropolitan Museum of Art's Alexis Gregory Curatorial Practice Program. Concentrating on ethical scholarship, she researches how to advance culturally responsive, care-oriented methodologies in the museum field, and her central focus is contributing to public scholarship, which she does as a member of Bard Graduate Center's Public Humanities and Research Department, and we're just so delighted to have Merida returning to campus to be our keynote speaker this year. Merida.
All right, thank you. So I'll talk a little bit more about all of those things now. Okay. Can everyone hear me? Good. Awesome. Cool. Hello, everyone. I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to be with you here today. I want to start by saying thank you to Dr. Hatfield for the introduction and for his continued support. I first presented at this symposium in 2017, and I'm delighted to share how my research has developed in the years since then. Here I am at the symposium 9 years ago, standing next to my friend Catherine, who's here today, and is an artist and high school science teacher, helping young students understand the world around them. I remember this symposium well, and the experience of presenting on research questions that emerged over the course of my thesis project. During my time at the University of Oregon, I was excited about a huge range of subjects, including history, biology, art, and geography. Through these disciplines, I became familiar with different ways of practicing research and communicating knowledge. Looking back, I see clearly how this was just the beginning of a long path of discovery. In the years since, I have worked to investigate the questions that began at this symposium, pursuing a range of professional, personal, and academic experiences to understand them better. So as Dr. Hatfield mentioned, my University of Oregon thesis research focused on the environmental history of Matusoms Island, off the coast of Wellington, New Zealand's capital city. And you can see it here on the upper left. It's a very small island. My research investigated how the physical landscape of Matusoms has changed over the past century, impacted by evolving land management policies. At the time I was doing research, ownership of the island had recently been transferred to local Maori iwi as part of a land redress settlement. The island was, and still is, governed by a Kaitiaki board and managed by the New Zealand Department of Conservation. Funded by a Euro grant, I traveled to New Zealand in 2017 to conduct primary research. Studying this co-stewardship model, I talked to different stakeholders and saw firsthand how knowledges of Matusoms intersected and informed how individuals cared for the island, and how this transformed the island itself. In my current scholarship, I continue to consider how different ways of knowing are present across shared spaces, and how cross-cultural institutions engage with these diverse epistemologies. Epistemologies, in short, might be described as knowledges or ways of knowing. Throughout my undergraduate research and in the years since, I have been exposed to a wide range of different ways of knowing. In this talk, I'll speak about how these experiences have shaped my scholarly perspective. As an undergraduate, I was introduced to many different ways of knowing land. Doing conservation work in New Zealand, I shadowed individuals who cared for and maintained natural spaces through a variety of methods, such as trapping and tracking. There, I learned the scientific names for plants and animal species, and how to quantify and classify diverse natural features. Studying geology, I spent a considerable amount of time in southern Utah, in Canyonlands National Park, learning about centuries of geological change and how this history can be observed in the colors and textures of the landscape. There we go. Back in Oregon, I studied local food systems, spending time with farmers who cultivate land in the Eugene area, growing fruit and vegetables for the community. I spoke with these farmers about how they learned from the landscapes they managed and how they developed practices for maintaining its health and ecological balance. After graduating, I moved to New York City and began working for small fashion brands focused on low-impact ethical systems production. I was exposed to incredible knowledges of design, materials, and making techniques, and saw firsthand all of the expertise and labor that is often rendered invisible in the fashion industry. During this time, I also stepped into my first teaching role, designing gallery tours and teaching young students about cultural history and visual art. I became increasingly aware of how histories are positioned in gallery spaces and designed lessons that incorporated the knowledges that each of my students brought with them. As a class, we studied historical and contemporary artworks by Native American artists, like this painting by Hopi Tewa artist Dan Nemingha. We discussed how artists come to know the world through art making, each informed by their own unique experiences. When I started my master's program at Bard Graduate Center, I was exposed to a range of methodologies for learning from objects. As I explored the world of material culture studies, I found that when you start from the object itself, there is space for many different ways of knowing to emerge. Presenting object-based research as part of BGC's Public Humanities and Research team has shown me the ways that material culture can serve as a strong anchor for positioning knowledge and ideas, engaging the senses and putting us into direct contact with making techniques and makers themselves. Studying curatorial practice has deeply informed my art historical approach. Last summer, I had the opportunity to work at the Wheelwright Museum of the American Indian in Santa Fe, New Mexico. The curators I worked with focused on integrating indigenous artist perspectives and voices into curatorial narratives, highlighting their knowledges and lived experiences. My work in museums has allowed me to better understand the thoughtful ways in which curators build knowledge around collections, coordinating how this knowledge comes alive in gallery spaces. Over this past year, I've continued to study curatorial practice at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, exploring strategies for integrating community knowledge into curatorial narratives, and highlighting the cultural importance and agency of individual artworks. Throughout my master's degree, I've thought critically about how knowledge is constructed in museums, and how this process is influenced greatly by individual people, talented curators who develop visual and intellectual narratives in museums such as the Met and the Wheelwright. Archives have also been a critical part of my research process and have greatly impacted how I write about artworks and the artists who made them. Art historians work in archives to better understand individuals' lived experiences, locating their perspectives in personal journals and correspondence, and reading for silences. Oral history is another critical avenue of discovery in art historical research. This year, I completed a large-scale digital project which allowed me to engage with oral history and work with an artist I greatly admire, fifth-generation Danae Weaver Linda Teller-Peet. The website I created explores Teller-Peet's work with collecting institutions across the United States, including the School for Advanced Research in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Studying collaborative research structures has allowed me to realize the incredible potential of these projects to increase epistemological diversity in museums. Working in a digital format also raised a new set of questions and possibilities. It offered a widely accessible and flexible format in which I could present written research alongside video, photographs, and audio, including the voices of research partners, which was a critical aspect of my project. My graduate work has been focused on the ethics of collaboration in connection with histories of collecting, categorizing, and caring for items of cultural heritage. Historically, in some US museums, there's a deep and problematic history of extraction from Native communities of both physical material culture and of knowledge. Incredible scholars like Amy Lonetree have written about curatorial strategies that prioritize co-authorship with Indigenous partners and recognize how knowledge is used and held in many forms across different cultures. Lonetree, pictured here, published her critical text, Decolonizing Museums, in 2008, offering specific decolonial curatorial strategies and highlighting the need for ceding curatorial control to Indigenous artists and research partners. In Research's Ceremony, published in the same year, scholar Sean Wilson presents a relational research paradigm, one that builds trust and accountability. The concept of relationality is a central aspect of Indigenous epistemologies, defined by Indigenous Australian scholar Lauren Timon as an ethic of responsibility practiced towards kin, those to whom we are related to and in relationship with. In her writing, Timon emphasizes that relationality is not metaphorical, but is inextricably linked to real responsibilities. These ideas converge in exciting new exhibitions, such as Towards Joy, New Frameworks for American Art, installed at in the Brooklyn Museum's 200th year. Dare Turner, pictured here, the museum's curator of Indigenous art, often describes curation as an act of care. Throughout this exhibition, diverse epistemologies are woven together, along with artworks from the museum's permanent collection. Curatorial narratives convey that research is a relational social practice rather than an individual one. It is my strong belief that this is true across disciplines, and my biggest lesson throughout my journey has been to leave room for serendipity in research. To share openly, expose yourself to as many ideas as possible, and always prioritize reciprocity and respect. As a young undergraduate at the University of Oregon, being introduced to a wide variety of disciplines and frameworks, I stood at the center of a network of ideas. As I've moved further into the art historical field, I now understand that the best research brings together a huge range of perspectives and creative voices, each bringing with them their own network of ideas. Yet collaborative research comes with responsibilities. In museums, prioritizing collaborative research requires a rethinking of authorship norms and power structures. It requires a commitment to relationship building and co-authorship and experimentation. I hope in sharing a bit of my story, I've prompted you all to consider how your own experiences inform how you construct knowledge in your respective disciplines. It's so wonderful to be back in this building, and I'm filled with gratitude for all of the individuals who generously shared their knowledge with me and encouraged me to trust my own curiosity. If there is one piece of advice I would share with you as you begin your own research journeys, it would be to recognize all the ways that research is a social act. To recognize that knowledge is made, carried, and valued in a variety of ways, and how these epistemologies come together in collaborative scholarship. I want to end with this drawing by artist Ruth Asawa. Asawa used drawing as a way of knowing the world and depicted a relational world in her artworks, visually representing interconnectivity. She is an artist I greatly admire because of her way of being in the world, of thinking expansively, looking closely, and focusing her life around learning and teaching, always an active part of her community. On that note, I just want to end by extending a huge thank you to my friends, family, teachers, and mentors at the University of Oregon and at Bard Graduate Center. And I want to thank you all for being with me here today. Oh, yeah. I know I went through a lot, so if you have any questions, we're going to do it.
Yeah, we have time for questions, and I can hand the microphone around if anybody. Any questions? I have one. Well, Jessica. Okay, sounds good. I have one too, but I was holding it back here.
Yeah, so thank you so much for your presentation. Something that I noticed was that you mentioned Geology Club at one point in time,
Yes.
and you have had such a unique journey through our institution, but also post our institution as you've continued to grow. I'm just curious, kind of what kind of outside of class activities really felt important to you now as you kind of reflect back on your time as a student
Here at U of O?
here at U of O?
Yeah, that's a great question. I didn't include so much because I wanted to try to stick to solid things, but I think along with all these experiences of traveling, of spending time in certain places, you develop your own connection to these spaces, and there's a lot of material systems of knowledge I talked about, but there's also a lot of immaterial ways that we live in spaces and value them, and I think at U of O, I had a lot of time that I was able to, travel and see the places I was researching. And I think, with especially studying place-based knowledge systems, that was a critical part of that journey, and that was very much outside of class and sometimes in very informal settings. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, Meredith, I had a question. So, in your experience, are there some specific examples of practices that have changed in the different institutions that you've worked with around decolonizing research and curation practices, just in the time that you've been working?
Yeah, like strategies or...
Yeah, like particularly the relationships and working with the Native communities and
Oh.
authors and artists.
Yeah. I mean, I think... yeah, I definitely at Pitt Rivers. So I was at Pitt Rivers Museum last summer, which I glazed over pretty quickly, but I was mostly working in their archives. But while I was there, they have like embarked on a lot of sort of community focused projects. And I was able to meet community members that were visiting the museum, visiting ancestors, belongings, some that they'd been separated from for a very, very long time. So it was like a very significant moment for everyone. And yeah, that was a really, say, important kind of time. At the Wheelwright too, I think that museum, being in Santa Fe and just the history of that museum is super community focused and artist focused. And so I was, I think a lot of their own strategies for curatorial work are decolonial in a sense, but they work really closely with the Navajo Nation for stewarding a lot of their cultural material that is at the museum or housed at the museum. So I was able to kind of see that process and realize all the practical considerations. I mean, I study a lot of like the intellectual considerations and co-authorship, but really see the practical considerations of creating space and time to do those things. And that's something that, like, for me is really critical that I didn't mention, which is funding around those initiatives, because they all, coordinating a lot of different people and knowledges takes time, and you never ever want to rush it, especially when people are visiting ancestors and historic material or material that had been collected before. So yeah, those are a few examples, yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
From graduation to now, was there any way that your research interests evolved that kind of surprised you or took you off guard that you weren't expecting?
Oh, that's good. I have to think for a second for that. I feel like, as you probably saw, I feel like I moved pretty intuitively. Like, I think maybe the thing that surprised me was like the light bulb that kind of went off when I found Bard Graduate Center, when I was like, oh, okay, like these all do connect. And I feel like that happens for a lot of people. And I had maybe like a longer time frame of that process to happen. But like even these disparate interests, like natural dyeing or working with textiles, like were really critical to my time studying material culture, and that I knew like I had knowledge around farming and growing certain things was also critical to, I would never think that those would be important to an art historical sort of framework, but they all have been like really essential to my own way of working. And so I think, yeah, I mean, I think nothing radically surprised me, but kind of realizing that every single piece of that journey did fit into where I ended up landing, yeah. Thank you for the question. All the way up.
How do you think, from a policy perspective, the United States should continue going about decolonization?
Well, that's a very big question. And I don't think I'm the one to answer it, to be honest. I think, like, I appreciate you raising that. But I mean, I think policy is not my main focus, but I will say, like I said, funding initiatives, because there's so much good work being done, like in the museum field, outside of it, in, I would say, every different discipline here at the U of O and at a lot of institutions I've like been at or even just visited, but creating structures for like permanent you know, programs and really funding like not only Native arts, but like emerging Native art historians. I mean, I think there's many different opportunities that like need to be funded. Yeah, that's what I would say, but definitely I appreciate you raising that point because it's a huge issue.
We have time for one more question if there's. Oh, sorry. Thanks. Thanks, Jessica.
Ms. Mahaffey, when you were an undergraduate student here at the University of Oregon, where is the best place to sit and write a paper?
Wait, wait, where? Sit where? On campus? Oh my gosh. Well, I was just saying when we were walking around before, I spent like a lot, I would say not, for me, not the library. It's like a place that there's people around and there's windows, and I was just saying that this building is like where I spent all my time, and it still feels very comforting to me somehow. So that's kind of like a miracle. But yeah, that would be my best advice. Yeah. Thank you all. I think that's a wrap. But thank you for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Meredith. It's wonderful to have you back on campus. We'll take a tour so you can see the installations of your original proposal years ago. So it's now my privilege to introduce our concluding speaker, Jerry Richmond, Interim Vice President for Research and Innovation and the Presidential Chair in Science and Professor of Chemistry at the University of Oregon. Bridging the fields of chemistry and physics, her research focuses on elucidating the molecular characteristics of aqueous surfaces through the combined use of nonlinear laser spectroscopy and molecular dynamic simulations, work with significant implications for oil remediation, atmospheric chemistry, and alternative energy technologies. She's also the founding director of COACH, a grassroots organization that has helped over 25,000 women scientists and engineers in career advancement in the U.S. and over 24 developing countries over the past 25 years. Dr. Richmond recently completed service as a President Biden appointee, serving as the U.S. Department of Energy's Undersecretary for Science and Innovation, where she oversaw all fundamental and applied research supported by the agency, as well as 13 DOE national laboratories. Her scientific and outreach achievements have been recognized with numerous prestigious honors, including the National Medal of Science awarded by President Obama, and the Priestley Medal, the highest honor of the American Chemical Society, among others. She is a member of the U.S. National Academy of Sciences and a fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and we're very honored to have her joining us here today. Thank you.
Okay, don't tell anybody else this that I've been having Zoom meetings with all week, but this is like my favorite to be here. I mean it. It's just, I just can't express the excitement that I have for undergraduates doing research. For me, it was life-changing. I mean, I grew up on a farm in Kansas and started doing research as an undergraduate, and a whole world opened up. And so and you know, all of this comes from curiosity, right? Wanting to know what, why, or how. And that's the power of research, is going after those what, why, and how, but also, things don't always work the way you want it to work, right? But you're able to figure out how to get past it. But through all my years of doing research with fabulous undergraduates and graduate students, great research, the question always comes up, what are you most proud of? And I say, you. I say all the students that have worked to get those damn lasers to work all the time. And they break down all the time, but they just keep going, and then they go on to careers that make me proud. It's just a way of helping you think through problems at a stage of your life when it can be so impactful in the way you think about where you're going to go. And so that's why I get so excited about undergraduate research, because it really helps you get confidence in what you want to do and go further. I've had my former undergraduates have gone so many different places. I ran for 35 years our undergraduate research program in chemistry and physics here at the University of Oregon, and still keep in touch with them. And in fact, I still keep in touch with one of my undergraduate research advisors. It's a long time, and he's living a very very long life. But we write each other all the time. So let me just say that the research is phenomenal, and the curiosity is overwhelming sometimes, but the most important point is the people. It's who you connect with now, and who you will connect with in the future. When I was an undergraduate, I worked for 3 different research directors at Kansas State University. I went to, as a sophomore, I went to IBM in Vermont to do research there on semiconductors. Got on the first plane I'd ever been on in my life, and then worked at DOE Berkeley. I have kept in touch with all of the people that I worked with those many, many years ago. So think of it as also an avenue to do things you may not have expected. I figured working in a lab, you'd be like this. You know, it's the white lab coat, but it's turned out to be such a huge, wonderful world. So to end, I will quote the famous philosopher, Dr. Seuss. Oh, the places you'll go and the people you'll meet. Congratulations to you all for all the work that you're doing. Rita, too. It's a life worth living. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I just want to thank all of our speakers today, Carl Schultz, Merida, Jerry, thank you so much for being here. I just want to let folks know there's still food left, so definitely indulge on your way out. The concurrent oral sessions will begin again shortly. The poster sessions will be both in the ballroom and here in the Redwood Auditorium starting at 4:30, and the Asian Studies event at 5:30 in the Cedar and Spruce room. So thank you so much for being part of the Undergraduate Research Symposium, and we'll hopefully see you next year. Thanks.